बिहारे। जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारे। जय राधा माधव राधा माधव राधे। जय रुक्मिणी द्वारकाधीश रुक्मिणी द्वारकाधीश रुक्मिणी द्वारकाधीश श्री राधे। जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय जय गौरनिताय। जय जगन्नाथ जय जगन्नाथ जय बलदेव जय सुभद्रा। जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद। जय जय प्रभुपाद 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 जय प्रभुपाद। जय जय गुरुदेव 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 जय गुरुदेव। श्रील प्रभुपाद की, अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की, निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे। Thank you very much, dear devotees, once again for kindly being present here this morning. Thank you to all the wonderful devotees who are part of this wonderful community. Thank you, Swavas Prabhu, for heading the community so nicely. And thank you, Shamchandra Prabhu, for organizing my trip here. I'm very grateful to all of you for your presence here this morning. Dear devotees, we are speaking from Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, chapter 30, verse number 32. It is Shisht Parampara, tradition established by the previous acharyas, that we should perform Mangalacharan, auspicious invocations, before we begin. So I'll recite auspicious invocations. Most of us know these verses. You can kindly sing along with me. Om Ajnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Soyam Rupah Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine नमो महावदान्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्ण करुणा सिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्त काञ्चन गौरांगी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वंशाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ग्रंथराज श्रीमद् भागवतम की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। दैवेनासादितं तस्य śamalaṁ niraye pumān bhuṅkte kuṭumba-poṣasya hṛta-vitta ivāturaḥ. One Vaishnava and one Vaishnavi can recite the verse. daivenāsāditaṁ tasya śamalaṁ niraye pumān bhuṅkte kuṭumba-poṣasya hṛta-vitta ivāturaḥ. Okay. Now daivenāsāditaṁ tasya śamalaṁ niraye pumān bhuṅkte kuṭumba-poṣasya hṛta-vitta ivāturaḥ. Thank you. Dear devotees, we will read the word for word. Please repeat the synonyms. Daivena, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Āsāditam, obtained. Tasya, his. Śamalam, sinful reaction. Niraye, in a hellish condition. Pumān, the man. Bhuṅkte, undergoes. Kuṭumba-poṣasya, of maintaining a family. hṛta-vitta, one whose wealth is lost. Like. āturaḥ, suffering. Translation and purport by Jagat Guru, His Divine Grace, Abhay Charanarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Translation. Thus, by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the maintainer of kinsmen is put into a hellish condition to suffer for his sinful activities, like a man who has lost his wealth. Purport. The example set herein is that the sinful person suffers just like a man who has lost his wealth. The human form of body is achieved by the conditioned soul after many births and is a very valuable asset. Instead of utilizing this life to get liberation, If one uses it simply for the purpose of maintaining his so-called family and therefore performs foolish and unauthorized actions, he is compared to a man who has lost his wealth and who upon losing it laments. When wealth is lost, there is no use lamenting, but as long as there is wealth, one has to utilize it properly and thereby gain eternal profit. It may be argued that when a man leaves his money earned by sinful activities, he also leaves his sinful activities here with his money. But it is especially mentioned herein that by superior arrangement, daivenāsāditaṁ, although the man leaves behind him his sinfully earned money, he carries the effect of it. When a man steals some money, if he is caught and agrees to return it, he is not freed from the criminal punishment. By the law of the state, even though he returns the money, he has to undergo the punishment. Similarly, the money earned by a criminal process may be left by the man when dying, but by superior arrangement he carries with him the effect and therefore he has to suffer hellish life. Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langhayate girim yat kripam tamaham vande Shri Gurum Dīnataranam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam. Hare Krishna. This particular chapter in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam is description by Lord Kapila of adverse fruitive activities. In other words, it is described how a living entity falls into a most difficult condition of life simply by their attachment to this world. And that is what the entire chapter is all about. In order to understand this current verse better, we should perform what is known as Simhavalokan. Simhavalokan is when a lion takes a few steps, then he looks behind once and then again takes a few steps. So this is called Simhavalokan, the gaze of a lion. So when we study Shastra, when we read a few verses, then we turn back and refer to the previous verse in order to understand the connection that exists between the previous verse and the current verse. So dear devotees, let us perform Simhavalokan, the gaze of the lion, and let us look at the previous verse. And this is the previous verse. The translation says, he goes alone to the darkest regions of hell after quitting the present body, and the money he acquired by envying other living entities is the passage money with which he leaves the world. So the previous verse says that after a person who has committed many sinful activities to earn money, because there are many ways of earning money which are based on dharma, dear devotees. And what is dharma? Dharma is Veda pranihito dharmo. Whatever is specified in the Vedas as recommendation is dharma. And the opposite of that is adharma. This definition comes from the servants of Yamaraj. When they were taking Ajamil away, at that point of time the Vishnu Dutas stopped them and said, you cannot take him away. The Yamadutas said, we have a direct order from our master that he has to be taken away because Ajamil has performed adharma, irreligiosity. And then the Vishnu Dutas asked, can you please tell us what is the definition of dharma? And then the Yamadutas say, Veda pranihito dharmo. Whatever is given in the Vedas is dharma, dear devotees. So, a person can earn a livelihood based on dharma, but instead a person becomes attached to earning more even through adharma, irreligious means. And then the money earned by such a person remains in this world, but he carries the sinful reactions that he has acquired, he or she has acquired in earning that money. Now, the previous commentator, Srila Sridhar Swami, explains the connection between this verse and the next verse which we are discussing today. Srila Sridhar Swami in his Bhavartha-dīpika says, Nanu, question, Papam api vihaya gacchatu. If he leaves the money behind, why doesn't he leave the sinful reactions behind? I hope you are able to understand. So this is the connection between the previous verse and this verse. So if he is leaving the money behind at death, then somebody can say that he also leaves the sinful reaction behind. Tatra aha. In reply to this, Kapil Muni says, daivena iti, the current verse beginning with daivena. Tasya kuṭumba-poṣasya śamalam papam daiveneshvarena praptam bhuṅkte. He suffers the reaction by daiva. What is daiva? Providence. By the arrangements of providence, he suffers the reaction for the sinful activities that he committed when he earned wealth through irreligious means. So the current verse which we are studying, 3:30-32, is simply to prove the point that although the money is left behind in this world, but the sinful reactions are taken away by the person who earned those sinful reactions. So this is the connection between the previous verse and the current verse, and this connection is also mentioned by Srila Prabhupada in the purport. Here he says, it may be argued that when a man leaves his money earned by sinful activities, he also leaves his sinful activities here with his money. But it is especially mentioned herein that by superior arrangement, daivenāsāditaṁ, although the man leaves behind him his sinfully earned money, he carries the effect of it. This is an exact translation of what Srila Sridhar Swami had specified in his commentary. Dear devotees, so Srila Prabhupada presented to us in this particular section what the previous acharyas, such as Srila Sridhar Swami, have explained. And Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu used to say, Jagat Guru Sridhar Swami Guru Karimani. If somebody wants to explain Srimad Bhagavatam, they should explain exactly like Srila Sridhar Swami explains. So dear devotees, this is Srila Prabhupada explaining the Srimad Bhagavatam exactly as Srila Sridhar Swami explains, because Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu specified that Srila Sridhar Swami is the highest authority in understanding the message of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So all commentators explain the Srimad Bhagavatam according to the commentary of that original Sanskrit commentator, Srila Sridhar Swami. So dear devotees, this was his commentary. Now the entire section on hellish planets is a sort of a difficult section, because most people in the world do not like to hear that there is something known as hell and that we will suffer in a hellish condition of life. In the modern world, where people's sensitivities are at their peak, dear devotees, to tell people that you will suffer in your next life is something not desirable, isn't it? But although the modern world believes in maintaining sensitivities, but at the same time it is a fact of life that in this modern world there have been people who have killed millions and millions of people. There have been people who have killed millions and millions of poor innocent animals, isn't it, dear devotees? And whenever in the news we hear that a certain person killed innocent children, the immediate reaction that people have is he should be, immediately put to death. Dear devotees, why should he be put to death? A question arises whenever we hear in the news that a certain person killed so many people, innocent people. Our immediate reaction is, it is better that he should be put to death. So even in the modern world, people would like to put a murderer to death. But if Providence arranges the same thing, people say, oh, it is very merciless. Isn't it? If the government arranges it, oh, the government is acting very nicely. But if Providence arranges it, oh, it is very merciless. Do not talk about hellish planets. But dear devotees, it is a fact of life. Yatha dhenu sahasreshu vatso vindati mataram tatha purva kritam karma kartaram anugacchati. Just as a calf is able to locate its mother cow amongst 1,000,000 cows, similarly karma is able to locate its recipient amongst millions of people. It is a fact of life. So karma locates its recipient very precisely. And then there arises the question in Western philosophy, often this question was asked, if such is the nature of the world where there is suffering in this life, and even in the Western religious scriptures there is hell prescribed in the next life for many people, then God must be a cruel God, dear devotees. Alright, either God is cruel or God doesn't exist. There is no third option. How many of you have heard this? Either God exists or God is cruel. There is no third option. So dear devotees, today we should try to tackle this from the Vedanta Sutras of Sri Vyasadeva, especially by referring to the Govinda-bhāshyam commentary of Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan. Because when Srila Prabhupada wrote his Bhagavad Gita, many of us might be knowing Srila Prabhupada dedicated his Bhagavad Gita to one personality. And who was that? Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan, who so very nicely wrote which Bhashya, dear devotees? Govinda Bhashya. So this means that Srila Prabhupada, when he was at Radha Damodar, he made an elaborate study of the Govinda Bhashya, and only after making an elaborate study did Srila Prabhupada dedicate it to Srila Baladev Vidyabhushan. So dear devotees, there is an entire section in the Govinda Bhashyam which deals with the cruelty, so-called cruelty of Bhagavan. And today I'd like to bring it out, because it is very important for us to understand how to make sense of the cruelty that is present in the world. But before we do that, I would like to point out the commentary of Sri Jiva Goswami on this very verse. Dear devotees, Sri Jiva Goswami has commented on this verse. He says, dear devotees, daivena iti uktepi, although it is providence which has arranged for the sinful reaction of this person. Dear devotees, who arranges for the sinful reaction? Providence. Na ishwarasya nairghrinyam. It is not that Ishwara, Bhagavan, is cruel. Sri Jiva Goswami is saying, Bhagavan is not cruel. He is dealing directly with the problems that have faced most of the world in modern times. Bhagavan is not cruel. Ishwarastu parjanyavad drashtavya iti nyayat. He says Ishwar is like parjanya. Dear devotees, can you please repeat after me? Ishwara is like parjanya. Now what is parjanya, dear devotees? Because Sri Jiva Goswami, rain, wonderful. So dear devotees, Sri Jiva Goswami says Bhagavan is like parjanya. Bhagavan is like rain. What does he mean when he says that Bhagavan is like rainfall? Okay. He rains on the ocean, he rains on the desert. Wonderful. So the analogy says that in a particular town or city, when rainfall occurs equally in all places in the town or the city. Everybody agrees, dear devotees? Yes? The city calculates the millimeters of rainfall or centimeters of rainfall, and it is the same for the entire town. Dear devotees, when rain falls equally in all places in the town, but at a certain place, thorny bushes grow up, and at another place there is wonderful basmati rice, fragrant basmati rice that grows. Is it the problem of the rainfall that in a particular place cactus grows, and in another place wonderful fragrant lotuses or wonderful basmati rice grows? Please tell me, is it the problem of the rainfall? The rainfall is simply an agent which activates the growth of the respective plants. But why are different plants growing in different places although the rainfall is exactly the same? What is the reason for different plants? Different seeds. So iti nyayat, Sri Jiva Goswami is saying, the living entities are carrying different seeds from the past. Bhagavan is simply acting as rainfall. And when Bhagavan is acting as rainfall, he is simply giving impetus to the seeds to grow and fructify in this life. It is we who have planted the seeds in the previous lives, and it is we who are receiving those seeds. So dear devotees, please tell me from this point of view, is Bhagavan cruel or is Bhagavan equal to all? He is equal to all. So this entire section is taken up in the Vedanta Sutra. Because the next question to be asked is, why did he create the world in the first place? If you take it to another level, why did he create the world in the first place? So the answer to that, dear devotees, is given in the Vedanta Sutra. This is the sutra, dear devotees. I will zoom in. Please repeat the sutra after me. Na prayojanavatvat na prayojanavatva, 2.1.31 Vedanta Sutra. There is no purpose of Bhagavan behind creating the world. Bhagavan doesn't have a selfish purpose behind creating the world. See, initially when we come to the path of Krishna consciousness, we are told that the material world is a prison house, it is a house of reform, where those living entities who have violated the order of God are put into suffering so that they can improve themselves and return to God. But as soon as we make the statement, it may be good to make that statement to a new person. The new person may not realize that making such statements puts Bhagavan in the category of a cruel creator, isn't it, dear devotees? So, we make such statements to newcomers because just as when small children ask us, how was I born? So, we don't tell the small child the exact process of childbirth, isn't it? So, we tell the child, oh, we prayed to God. One fine day outside the door we heard a knock and we heard a stork flying above the roof. And when we opened the door, you were in a wonderful basket and you were crying and we took you inside, and that is how you were born. And then when the child grows up after a few years, then the child understands exactly how childbirth takes place. The devotees. So initially we may tell a person that this material world is a prison house for reform. But now 10 years have passed, 20 years have passed, 30 years have passed. Now it is time to know what Vedanta says, because the Srimad Bhagavatam is a commentary on which sutras, dear devotees? Vedanta Sutras. So we should understand what is given in the Vedanta Sutras about the creation of the world from a more mature point of view now. Na prayojanatvat. There is no purpose in creating the world. Shyamchandra Prabhu, I will show you. Have a loud enough voice, Prabhu. Alright. So I will show you the English translation, a very authentic English translation of this. Prabhu, can you please read what is said in the translation above 32? The Lord has no creation towards inclination. This is an English translation of the Govinda Bhashya of Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan. It was done in the previous century. But the Lord has no inclination towards creation because He has no motive. Prabhu, I will ask you to please also read. If you have a mic, Prabhu, it will be better. Here, from this particular point, I would like that, I will read a few things, then you can read it, okay? The Lord can have no urging towards creation because here the argument of Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan. Being perfect, he has no motive to create. Dear devotees, if a person is perfect, completely fulfilled in all desires, will they have any motivation remaining? Please tell me. No. Because Bhagavan is completely fulfilled in all desires, there are no more motivations remaining to fulfill. Why will Bhagavan act as a creator? There is no motivation to create the world. Alright? Then he says, in the world every activity is seen to exist on a motive, beneficial either for one's own self or for the sake of another. So in this world people act for two ways, for benefiting oneself, for benefiting others. Both things cannot apply to Bhagavan. Why? The motive beneficial to his own self cannot exist in this case of the Lord because he being perfect, all his wishes are fulfilled and the scriptures repeatedly declares it. That Bhagavan, all of Bhagavan's activities are fulfilled. Even in this world, dear devotees, one fine day a person feels completely fulfilled. He is sitting on a chair and somebody asks him, do you want to do anything? His reply will be, nah, I am done, I am good. I don't want to do anything now. So even a human being who feels completely fulfilled temporarily says, I don't want to do anything. What to speak of Bhagavan? He is completely fulfilled. Bhagavan will never want to do anything like this. Acha. So if not for self-benefit, then he should do for somebody else's benefit. In reply to this, Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan says, nor is his motive to do something beneficial to others, because the creation evidently is for the sake of punishing the jivas and making them suffer the pains of birth and death. This is not the case, dear devotees. Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan says, an all compassionate Lord would not create a universe merely to punish the jivas for their misdeeds. It's very important to understand. An all merciful Lord will never create the universe merely to punish the living entities for their misdeeds. So this is the answer to the classical Western philosophy problem that God is cruel. Dear devotee, it's very important to understand from the Vedanta Sutra point of view that God, the Bhagavan of Vedanta, is not a cruel Bhagavan. He did not create the universe for the sake of putting the living entities into misery. So at least that knot in the heart is opened, dear devotees. Alright? So one thing we have to understand, Bhagavan did not create to put us into misery. And no one creates anything without a motive. So there is nothing, no purpose for the Lord to create this world. Acha. Dear devotees, if there is no purpose for the Lord to create the world, still, did He create the world? Yes. Why did He create the world? I told you, Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan says he is not going to fulfill his own desires, not the desires of somebody else. There is no purpose. The sutra said very clearly, no purpose. Yes. To perform his pastimes to attract the living entities back to the spiritual world. Good answer. But does the answer match what Sri Vyasadeva says in Vedanta Sutra? If that was his inclination, he would give the living entity in every birth a chance to meet him. But you can see so many living entities like trees, grass, etc. They do not get a chance to even know about him in their conditioned lives. Yes, Prabhu. Okay, yeah, similar answer. Okay, wonderful. Okay, Prabhu. Because they can't stay in the spiritual world, alright. So by default they should be adjusted in the material world. Okay, alright. So dear devotees, next sutra gives the answer to this. Please repeat after me. Lokavat tu lila kaivalyam. Leela Kaivalyam, Keval Leela, it is only a sport of Bhagavan. Now dear devotees, in the previous sutra we says, does Bhagavan have any motivation? No. Then why will Bhagavan create merely out of sport? So Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan explains, please hear the example carefully. For example, if there is a king who is fully satisfied in all the desires, one morning he wakes up and suddenly his mind starts experiencing happiness, more happiness, more happiness. Dear devotees, as and when happiness increases in the king, he is sitting on the bed. When happiness increases, something will start happening. What will start happening? First, happiness will show on his face. What will start happening? Smile. Then if happiness increases, then he will get up from the bed. And if happiness further increases, he will start doing what? Dancing. Now when the king is dancing like this, you can ask the king, hey wait, why are you dancing? There is no reason, I just feel happy. I hope you are able to understand. There is no reason for it. I just feel very happy today. I am dancing because I am happy. There is no reason behind, there is no motivation behind my dancing today. I just feel very happy. So our Bhagavan is Ishvaraha Paramaha Krishnaha Satchid Ananda Vigraha. He is the personification of all happiness. When Bhagavan creates it, he is creating it merely out of his happiness. Happiness is overflowing from his body, and for that reason Bhagavan creates the world. Wow, and your creation is our suffering, isn't it, Bhagavan? Huh? Your creation is our suffering. You might have created out of your overflowing happiness, but look at the jivas who are suffering in the world that you created, isn't it? So dear devotees, Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan quotes a verse. I will go to the next objection, but he quotes a verse. Please repeat after me. Srishtyaadikam harirnaiva prayojanam apekshatu Srishtyadikam, creation, etc. Naiva, he never does prayojanam apeksha, with some desire in his mind. He never does that. Then why does he do that? Kurute keval anandat yatha mattasya nartanam. Keval anandat. You know what is the meaning of keval ananda, dear devotees? Only out of his joy, overflowing joy. Yatha, exactly. Mattasya nartanam, as an intoxicated person dances for no reason. Dear devotees, similarly, Bhagavan creates out of overflowing joy. There is no other reason behind it. Alright, dear devotees, Bhagavan was not thinking that this jiva I want to punish. In this creation I will punish him. I'll show him who I am. Alright, so this is not the purpose of Bhagavan in creating the universe. Bhagavan has already said in the Gita, Samoham sarva bhuteshu na me dveshyasti na priyaha. Does anybody know what is the translation of that verse? I am equal to all living entities. I envy no one, nor is anyone especially very dear to me. When Bhagavan has said that in the Gita, that I envy no one, dear devotees, the Bhagavan of Vedanta is not a jealous or envious God who will put the living entities in a place of suffering. So it's very important to understand this fact. So, dear devotees, the next objection arises, if Bhagavan's creation is out of joy and it results in our suffering, Bhagavan must be cruel, isn't it, dear devotees? So, in reply to that, the next sutra of the Vedanta Sutra says, please repeat after me. Vaishamya nairghrinnye na sapekshatvat tathahi darshayati. There are two things that are not present. You can see here na in the sutra, na. There are two things that are not present in Bhagavan. Please repeat after me. Vaishamya, biased nature. What is Vaishamya? Biased nature. Second, nairghrinnye, cruelty. Alright, two things are not present in Bhagavan. Biased nature and cruelty are not at all present in Bhagavan. Why? Sapekshatvat. Sapekshatvat means whatever Bhagavan does to a living entity is dependent on the previous seeds sown by the living entity. Dear devotees, previous seeds sown by the living entity are the reasons for Bhagavan giving a certain reaction to a living entity. Bhagavan doesn't envy a particular person, nor does Bhagavan favor a particular person. Dear devotees, he says, Sapekshatvat, Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan says, Srashtuhu karma apekshitatvat. He expects, he looks at the karma of the previously committed karma, then he gives those particular reactions. In this world, dear devotees, please tell me, I will ask you a few questions, please answer in yes or no. A person who does not treat his parents nicely, do they deserve to get a good parent in their next life? No. A person who does not treat his guru nicely, do they deserve to get a good guru in their next life? Are all of you are not Bhagavan, yet you are speaking like this. Huh? All of you are thinking exactly like Bhagavan, even though you are not Bhagavan. Huh? Why did you say yes to both the questions? Because that is what is just. That is what is to be done. I hope you are able to understand. So, similarly in this world you may find that there are certain living entities who may be born, there are some living entities who are born without parents, orphans, dear devotees. It always has some connection with some previous karma or previous lives. So, one has to understand, this is what the Vedanta says. A certain child is born on the streets, and no matter how much they try to advance in their life, no matter how much motivational speeches you give to them, there is only a certain level to which they will be able to advance. And then there is a child who is born with a golden spoon, is born to rich parents, and for them advancement in material life is very easy. And all the motivational speakers who have promised millions and millions of dollars, many books are there, how to earn $1 million in a month. They never teach that in Africa. I hope you are able to understand. Huh? There is a reason for that. They always give their teachings in the first world countries. The motivational speakers who promise millions and millions of dollars should put their words into action in the poorest continents of the world. Dear devotees, isn't it? That is the litmus test of motivational speaking. You can attract money simply by thinking about it. Wow, wow, wow. And what do you think? Huh? You can attract money simply by thinking about it. And where is the karma to back it up? Oh, you don't need any good karma to back it up. You just think about money and money will come to you. Is that so? You need some backup even in this world. If you simply go to the government and say, I want money. And what will the government say, dear devotees? Work for it, isn't it? Huh? So similarly, the higher agencies are also thinking like this. So, dear devotees, it is very much dependent on the karma that one has previously performed. And Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan quotes here, please note here, dear devotees, please repeat after me. Esha eva sadhu karma karayati. Wonderful extract from an Upanishad. This extract was quoted as it is by Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavad Gita, 5th chapter, 15th verse. I will show what Srila Prabhupada, how Srila Prabhupada translates it. Shyam Chandra Prabhu, I am showing what. Can you see here, Prabhu, what is being quoted? Is it the same passage in Bhagavad Gita 5.15? Esha uhyeva sadhu karma karayati.
Yes.
Yeah, please read the translation.
The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell.
Acha, dear devotees, when a particular person commits a negative activity, who is flaming him from behind? Please tell me. Huh? Who is giving him inspiration from behind? Bhagavan. Please be confident and say, who is inspiring him from behind? Bhagavan. All of you are still not confidently saying. Please say loudly, who inspires a person in negative activities? Bhagavan. And who inspires a person in positive activities? Bhagavan. But is Bhagavan biased? No. Is Bhagavan cruel? No. Bhagavan is looking at the previous record. This person has been a chain smoker in his previous life. He is carrying the tendencies from previous life. In his next life, when he comes across the superstore or the petrol pump or the gas pump, he will be immediately attracted to a pack of cigarettes. Dear devotees, I hope you are able to understand. But Bhagavan is not doing it randomly. God doesn't play dice with the universe. It is expecting the karmas of the living entities. He is looking at the previous record of the living entities. So dear devotees, one final objection that arises, but if he is looking at the previous karma of all the living entities, there must be a time at which all the karma was zero. Isn't it, dear devotees? So the next sutra of Vedanta Sutra answers that. This is the final sutra that we will take. Please repeat. Na karma vibhagat iti chen na anāditvat. It is not that the living entities began, all of them began from a clean slate. There was no beginning to karma. Anāditvat. Karma is beginningless. Dear devotees, so you can't give the argument that all living entities must have begun with a fresh slate, and then Bhagavan was biased. So Bhagavan encouraged the living entity in this way and Bhagavan encouraged the living entity in that way. No. There was never any beginning to karma. Anāditvat. Karma is beginningless siddhanta of this material world. Right? So Prabhu, I will quickly, Shyam Chandra Prabhu, I will quickly pull out 34 and then you can kindly read the translation of the 34th sutra. Can you see, Prabhu, what is the title here? The Lord is Adhikaran 10. Can you read the title, Prabhu?
Adhikaran 10. The Lord is neither partial nor cruel.
Yes, this is the Vedantic position. Bhagavan is neither partial nor cruel. And we understood this. Please read the translation of this, only the translation.
There exists no partiality and cruelty in the Lord, because the pleasure and pain suffered by beings has regard to their karmas, and so also the scriptures declare.
Which scriptures? I quoted, Srila Prabhupada had quoted this scripture, Esha hi eva sadhu karma karayati. This is the scripture. Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan is saying. Srila Prabhupada has perfectly studied. Srila Baldev Vidyabhushan is quoting the exact reference from Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan in his purport to Bhagavad Gita 5.15. Dear devotees, finally, the final sutra. Prabhu, please read.
The theory of karma cannot explain the inequality and cruelty seen in this universe, because when the creation first started, there was no distinction of souls and consequently of karmas. This objection, however, is not valid because there is no beginning of creation.
This is Srila Baldev Vidya. This objection is also not valid, that at a certain beginning all the living entities would have been equal, and then why did Bhagavan inspire a particular living entity in this way, and why did he inspire another living entity in that way? This objection is not correct because there is no beginning to creation. Creation is beginningless. Karmas are beginningless. This is how Vedanta explains the entire thing. So if a particular living, and we forgot, there is not only suffering in this world, there is also a lot of enjoyment in the world, isn't it, dear devotees? 7 planets above from here, are they places of suffering or enjoyment, dear devotees? Enjoyment. Even below earth there are subterranean heavenly planets. Srila Prabhupada calls them subterranean heavenly planets. Mainly they are places of enjoyment for the asuras. So please tell me, majority of the world is filled with enjoyment or suffering? Enjoyment. But because in the human form of life we see a mixture of enjoyment and suffering, therefore we tend to magnify the suffering and we say that the world is full of suffering. But if you look neutrally at the universe, you will also see that the universe is also full of enjoyment. But we never give credit to Bhagavan for the enjoyment that he has given to us, isn't it, dear devotees? So before we blame Bhagavan for the suffering that has occurred in our life, first let us give credit to Bhagavan for the enjoyment that he has given to us. With that, dear devotees, I'll pause my speech. Thank you very much. Yadatra skalitam kinchit vidvam saha purayantu tat. Yadatra saushthavam kinchit tad guroreva menehi. Yadatra skalitam kinchit. It is possible I might have made a mistake in explaining something. I tried to explain to the best of my ability, but if there was any mistake, vidvam saha, your learned devotees, purayantu tat, please correct any mistake. But yadatra saushthavam kinchit, if there's anything nice you found, tad guroreva, it belongs to my gurus. May nahi, I don't have any claim over it. Alright, thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Yeah.
So I think you did an excellent job of absolving Krishna from any blame for the sufferings of the conditioned souls.
Wonderful.
You know, but where is the benevolence? In other words, okay, he's not to blame for the suffering, but I can't quote you, but clearly I know from reading Prabhupada's books that Prabhupada makes the point that this is an explanation you sort of presented and rejected in the beginning of your explanation, that this is a place, it's an opportunity for reformation. It's at Krishna's causeless mercy that he creates the material worlds to give the conditioned souls a chance to reform themselves so they can go back to Godhead.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile?
So I only had time till 8:30. I exceeded by 5 minutes. But if I would have had more time, I would show you the next sutra. Sri Baldev Vidyabhushan and Vyasdev are thinking exactly on your lines, Prabhu. Alright? So here comes the next sutra, Prabhu. Big
You want
explanation.
to go away thinking Krishna's more than just not a bad guy, he's a good guy.
Prabhu, can you see the title?
The grace of the Lord is not
Partiality. The grace. Bhagavan also gives grace. The material world is also a place where Bhagavan will give grace to the living entities who are inclined to him. But he will wait for the living entity to become inclined. Right? So that is the next sutra. But the topics, if I continue, we'll have to do the whole second chapter.
Well, what about the desire of the living entity itself?
What about the desire of the living entity?
The living entity wants to commit simple activity.
Yeah.
So how does that Krishna, he's there just to allow that to happen?
Why does Krishna allow a living entity, the desire to get fructified in the first place? Krishna allows a living entity to carry out his or her activities because the living entity's freedom is never taken away by Bhagavan. It is only after doing a certain thing that the living entity will know what are the repercussions of that particular activity. So Bhagavan will never prevent them, although Bhagavan will give indication in the heart, this is not good. Living entity says, due to previous samskaras, living entity says, I know it is not good, but I still want to do it. So Srila Prabhupada used to give the example of a father and a son. There is a fan, and the son wants to put his finger in the fan. And the father is telling the son, this is not good. And the son is saying, no, but I feel attracted to the fan. I wish to put my finger. Many of us might be knowing this analogy, And then the father slows down the fan, And then he opens the covering of the fan, and he says, all right, you put your finger in it. And once the child puts the finger, he starts crying. And then later the child says, I'll never put my finger in the fan again. So, curiosity killed the cat. But Bhagavan never lets the child remain curious. Bhagavan lets the child fulfill all the curiosity. Because the living entity is never going to die. Their bodies may finish, but the living entity will never die. This is Bhagavan's protection. All right? So I hope that answers your query to some degree of satisfaction. Yes, Prabhu, then we'll come to you.
Prabhu, in seeing all the different explanations by the different acharyas, it makes a lot of sense, it's very clear. Still the question might be, I'm asking the question now, this is just in regards to the creation within the material world.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Now, someone brings a different question and says, well, how did it actually originates everything? In other words, and there is a verse that says, Krishna bahirmukha bhoga vancha kare nikatestamaya tareya patiyadare.
Right.
And then another verse goes, different in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedahan samatitani vartamani chavarjuna bhavishyani chabutani mantu vedana kashana. I know past, I know present, I know the future. So he knew everything.
Yeah.
So from the beginning, if we turn away from Krishna, can you explain that? All the entanglement
so we are gradually approaching that philosophical problem as to why the jiva initially turned away from Sri Krishna. So, because this is such a contentious issue, especially in our society, it is such a contentious issue that it becomes difficult to harmonize 2 points of view. And I'll tell you very honestly, there are 2 points of view in this regard. One point of view is at a certain point of time the jiva turned away from Sri Krishna. This is one point of view, and Srila Prabhupada often supported that point of view. Another point of view which is supported by the previous acharyas is that the jivas, there was never a time when the jivas turned away from Krishna. The jivas were eternally present here. Now we have to harmonize both these points of view. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur harmonizes this in his Jaiva Dharma, in the 15th chapter of Jaiva Dharma. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur harmonizes this. I'll try to pull out the quote meanwhile. Meanwhile, I will explain what Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says about harmonizing the 2 points of view. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur in Jaiva Dharma, he specifies something. I will try to pull out the quote, and here it is. Okay. I am reading the original Bengali of Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Krishnera nitya das jiva sviya swarup bhuliya gaya maya baddha hayya chen. एक कथा सकल वैष्णवी बलिया थाकेन किंतु सकले जाने न जीव नित्य वस्तु है दो प्रकार नित्य बद्ध उ नित्य मुक्त ए विषय मानव बुद्धि प्रमादेर वशीभूत बलिया ए रूप उक्ति है किंतु धीर व्यक्ति चित समाधि द्वारा अप्राकृत सत्यर अनुभव करें. English translation. All Vaishnavas say, all Vaishnavas, not only Srila Prabhupada, this is all Vaishnavas in all schools of Gaudiya Vaishnavism say that the jiva is an eternal servant of Krishna, and at one point of time the jiva forgot its swarupa and has now become trapped in Maya. So all Vaishnavas say that at a certain point of time the jiva left Sri Krishna. However, all of them also know simultaneously that the jivas are eternal entities of two types, Nitya Baddha, those who are in the material world and who are never with Krishna. Nitya Siddha, those who are ever with Krishna and never in the material world. Then why do the Acharyas explain that the jiva turned away at a certain point of time? Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, the entire subject matter is explained in this manner because human intellect is conditioned by inattentiveness and it cannot comprehend beginningless time. Because human intelligence cannot comprehend beginningless time, therefore Acharyas always give an explanation that the living entity turned away at a certain point of time. So Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Mahashaya knows both points of view. He knows the point of view that the jiva turned away from Sri Krishna at a certain point of time. He also knows the point of view that there was never a turning away. The jivas were eternally present here. Both points of view he respects. But he says the Acharyas present it in such a way so that because the living entities in the world have always seen things which have a beginning and an end. They have no idea of something which is beginningless. Therefore, because the living entities have no idea of something beginningless, therefore to present to them something which they can make sense of, therefore the Acharyas present things in this way. This is in the 15th chapter of Sri Jaiva Dharma, where Sri Bhaktivinoda Thakur Mahashaya, our own Acharya, has harmonized both these points of view in a most elegant manner. So I always take shelter of him, because if I give an argument from my side, then people will say you are favoring one position. But if I give an argument that Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur Mahashaya has given, and I quoted also the original Bengali, so then it will become very easy for us to harmonize both points of view. So this is what I would like to say. So what Srila Prabhupada has said is perfect. What the previous Acharyas have said is perfect. But the harmonization is needed between both of them, and the harmonization given by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur is perfect. So that is what I'd like to say. Alright? Thank you very much. Yes, Prabhu.
You mentioned about Sridhar Swami. I heard that he's original commentator.
Yeah.
Like that, we should refer to him. But you also stated that he is the highest commentator or the greatest commentator.
Yeah.
So where is that stated?
All right. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, it is Antya Leela 7.133, Sridhar Swami Prasade Bhagavad Jani. It is only by the mercy of Sridhar Swami that one understands Srimad Bhagavatam. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu did not give this position to anybody else. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. Sridhar Swami is the spiritual master of the entire world, because by his mercy we can understand Srimad Bhagavatam. I therefore accept him as a spiritual master. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declares Sridhar Swami as Jagat Guru, the Guru of the entire world when it comes to understanding the Srimad Bhagavatam. And that is why he is considered as the highest authority, the original Sanskrit commentator on Srimad Bhagavatam, in the words of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Shyam Chandra Prabhu.
Now, for me, whenever I'm trying to understand any Vedic literature, ultimately if we keep on reasoning, ultimately the most difficult subject where I end up, which is difficult to comprehend, is trying to understand two words, Anadi and Achintya.
Yeah.
I mean, if I understand these two words, then everything is fine. But understanding, because the word itself means you cannot understand. I mean, you see? I mean, how would you understand which is not understandable is the biggest challenge.
Wonderful. So, one in this human form of life, dear devotees, please answer in yes or no. Does our intelligence have a beginning in this body?
No.
In this body, I am saying.
Intelligence has a beginning.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Yeah. And the mind of this body also has a certain point of beginning.
Right, yes.
So, that which has a beginning, a container which has a beginning, how can such a container understand that which is beginningless? The very body has a beginning and an end.
Right.
So how can a container which is limited by beginning understand something which is beginningless?
Yeah. Because in Bhagavad Gita also, soul is transcendental, it is not material. But at the same time, Krishna says that you have to contemplate on the soul. I mean, it's something, same thing.
Yeah.
Like you are trying to say something which is beyond, at the same time you are trying to understand something which is beyond.
Yeah.
It is like opposite to each other.
No, soul is without beginning, it is without end, you cannot conceive of the soul. But you have to contemplate. But contemplate how? Based on the words of Shastras and previous Acharyas. They will try to bring the nature of the soul as much as possible within your intelligence by certain words. The limit of those words is the limit of our understanding of the soul. But if you say, I want to understand the soul through pratyaksh pramān, direct perception, sorry, that is not possible. You can only understand the soul or the super soul through one pramān, and which pramān, dear devotees, is that? Shabda pramān. It is not understandable by pratyaksh pramān. So the soul is inconceivable through direct perception, but the soul is perceivable through verbal testimony of Shastra and the previous Acharyas. So that is the answer to the query.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This by chit samadhi.
Yeah, Chit Samadhi.
Yes. Can you explain that a little bit? Chit samadhi.
What is Chit Samadhi? A person can understand something by Chit Samadhi. Dear devotees, we should understand, a person will finally understand the truth through Chit Samadhi. So this Samadhi is specified by Srila Prabhupada in his 8th verse of Shri Upadeshamritam, Nectar of Instruction, purport. I will quote the purport by Srila Prabhupada, and it is very, very joyous to understand this particular purport. Srila Prabhupada says in the purport to NOI verse 8, in the neophyte stage one should always engage in hearing Krishna Katha. Stage 1. This is called Shravan Dasha, the stage of hearing. By constantly hearing the holy name of Krishna and hearing of his transcendental form, qualities and pastimes, one can attain to the stage of acceptance, where a person accepts that Krishna is my supreme goal. That is called Varana Dasha, the stage of acceptance. When one attains to this stage, he becomes attached to the hearing of Krishna Katha. And then one is able to chant in ecstasy, he attains the stage of Smaran Avastha, the stage of remembering. And in remembering, there are 5 things. Level 1, recollection. Level 2, absorption. Level 3, meditation. Level 4, constant remembrance. And level 5, trance. Now, trance in Sanskrit has a name, dear devotees. What is the name of trance in Sanskrit? Samadhi. So, when a devotee progresses gradually, Srila Prabhupada says, everybody should remember Krishna, but at first remembrance of Krishna may be interrupted. But later, by practice, remembrance proceeds uninterrupted. When remembrance is uninterrupted, it becomes concentrated and is called meditation. When meditation expands and becomes constant, it is called anusmriti. By uninterrupted and unceasing anusmriti, one enters the stage of samadhi or spiritual trance. And this is the main statement. After Smaran Dasha or samadhi has fully developed, the soul comes to understand his original constitutional position. So this is where Srila Prabhupada is explaining how to get to that stage of samadhi through Shravan Dasha, Varana Dasha, Smaran Dasha. In Smaran there are 5 sub-stages. Remembrance, meditation, constant meditation, absorption and samadhi. And when samadhi is attained, we attain the fulfillment of being members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. So that Krishna is the only living entity, Krishna and his associates are the only living entities who remain in our consciousness. And at that moment, the living entity, Krishna himself gives perfection to the living entity, tells the living entity, this is your position in the spiritual world. And when Krishna gives that position in the spiritual world, the living entity understands what is the reality. Otherwise, with a conditioned mind, it is impossible to understand Anadi and Achintya. Very impossible. So I hope that answers your query, Prabhu. All right? So thank you very much, dear devotees. I think time is up, 8:51. So I'll respect the time. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari.